primetime address. What you can expect President Joe Biden to say about the coronavirus pandemic tonight. Fight for the unborn. New developments in the nomination of Xavier Becerra to become Secretary of Health and Human Services. A bill known as H.R. 1. Why Trump administration official Ken Cuccinelli is pushing back against a Democratic proposal to change election laws. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, March 11th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. It has been exactly 1 year since coronavirus was declared a global pandemic. Since then, more than 2.6 million people have died, including more than 529,000 Americans. Many more have lost their jobs. And President Joe Biden believes the nearly $2 trillion bill that he signed into law today will help. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, President Joe Biden was scheduled to sign the American Rescue Plan into law tomorrow, but instead the event was moved up to today. And tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern, when the president addresses the nation about COVID-19 and the pathway forward, he'll be able to tout the passage of the new law here on his 50th day in office.
Got it. Thank you all.
President Joe Biden celebrates the signing of his key campaign promise, the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill.
This historic legislation is about rebuilding the backbone of this country and giving people in this nation, working people, middle-class folks, people who built the country, a fighting chance.
The law hands out money to most Americans, but also millions of dollars pro-life groups say will pay for abortions. The president hopes the money will restore millions of lost jobs.
We are certainly hopeful that we'll see strong and robust growth this year, which is what we need to actually get back to full employment quicker and get out of what is still a very serious jobs hole that we are in.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says the president will provide hope during his first primetime address tonight.
He plans to provide a clear outline of his approach, level with the American people about what is required of them, but also provide a sense of hope of what is possible.
President Biden's remarks will come exactly 1 year after President Donald Trump addressed the nation about what was then the newly arrived pandemic.
Smart action today will prevent the spread of the virus tomorrow.
And while many Americans are desperate to get back to normal fast,
he will lay out the next steps he will take to get the pandemic under control.
Now, starting next week, the Help Is Here tour arrives. The president and vice president will fan out across the country, selling the American Rescue Plan to Americans. And also today, after the president signed the bill, he walked right out of the Oval Office, did not take any reporters' questions. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
President Joe Biden's choice for the nation's top health official appears to have the green light after two senators who were on the fence say that they will vote to confirm Xavier Becerra. Republican Senator Susan Collins, along with Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, will vote yes despite Becerra's pro-abortion views. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales breaks that story.
This is a major blow to pro-life senators and organizations aimed at protecting life. With these two yes votes, that means that Xavier Becerra has enough votes to seal his confirmation before a full Senate next week.
Unfortunately, yes, we don't have the votes to stop his nomination, which is unfortunate because he is very much out of the mainstream. His views on abortion, on freedom of conscience and religious liberty are radical and extremist.
Senate Minority Whip Senator John Thune says he's disappointed and calls Xavier Becerra a threat to religious liberties, and he's not alone.
He'll be a huge supporter of Planned Parenthood. He'll be trying to take federal dollars and, under the name of family planning, open more abortion clinics.
Weeks ago, Xavier Becerra faced a firestorm of questions from Republicans during this committee confirmation hearing. Pro-life lawmakers asked about his lack of experience to become Secretary of Health and Human Services, and more importantly, his views on abortion.
You voted against a ban on partial birth abortion. Why?
I understand that people have different, deeply held beliefs on this issue, and I respect that. We may not always agree on where to go, but I think we can find some common ground on these issues.
In an email statement to EWTN News Nightly, the West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin states, quote, "While Attorney General Xavier Becerra and I have very different records on issues like abortion and the Second Amendment, he has affirmed to me his dedication to working with members on both sides of the aisle." Republican Senator Susan Collins had a similar response, quote, "Although there are issues where I strongly disagree with Mr. Becerra, I believe he merits confirmation as HHS Secretary."
We'll be riding herd on him. We'll be doing everything we can to ensure that he doesn't go down a path that undermines those very core beliefs and principles of our democracy.
The Senate just voted to send the nominee out of committee to the full Senate floor. That vote is expected to take place either Thursday or Friday of next week. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
As the American Rescue Plan becomes law, the focus now turns to another Democrat-backed measure on the future of U.S. elections. An editorial in today's Washington Examiner calls the measure known as H.R. 1, quote, largely an exercise in taking the worst election laws in some of the worst governed states and imposing them on the entire country. Joining us now to talk more about this is Ken Cuccinelli, former Attorney General of the state of Virginia and National Chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative. Ken, welcome back. Great to have you on. I want to get your thoughts on H.R. 1. What do you think of this bill, and what are your concerns about it specifically when it comes to election transparency?
Well, you know, if we went specific, it's 800 or so pages. We could go for hours, unfortunately. They federalize all election laws. States wouldn't be allowed to do virtually anything separate from what Washington dictates. That's a huge problem. But secondarily, and just as bad, what they're imposing are all the worst practices from this most recent election cycle, where many things were loosened up because of COVID. And literally automatic registration of voters, which sounds like a nice, convenient thing, except when a lot of those people registered won't be citizens. They can't be prosecuted for that or for voting after being so registered. There are mandatory redistricting provisions that have anti-religious bias written into them in the bill. The free speech pieces of the bill are so bad that even the ACLU and other groups like that oppose those parts of the bill. It's truly a breathtaking attempt for a party in power to try to consolidate power by changing the system drastically to their advantage. And unfortunately, what they view as their advantage is opening the door to fraud.
And also, as you know, pro-life groups have concerns about this bill as well. Let's talk a little bit more about that and how it would impact the pro-life movement.
So I'm working with the Susan B. Anthony List, premier pro-life group in the country. And the reason a lot of people say, well, what's a pro-life group doing working on this? But to the point of your question, we can't have an honest debate in the public square about life if the elections aren't fair. And that's where we are today. That's where a lot of people feel we are today. And so this is, as we view it at Susan B. Anthony List, this is a cornerstone issue that we build on to use our free speech rights and our ability for our activists to participate in elections to change the outcomes and change the laws. We are on the side of truth when it comes to life. But if we don't get to make the case for that truth in a fair environment, it is very hard to motivate activists and donors to participate, and ultimately voters. And that's a major threat that H.R. 1 poses all across the country. And unfortunately, I believe that's intentional on the part of some of the people in the radical left who've advanced this legislation.
Ken, as far as Election Transparency Initiative goes, what is your group doing to combat H.R. 1?
So you've already mentioned Joe Manchin, Senator Manchin of West Virginia once. He is a key vote here in a 50-50 Senate. Kristen Sinema, Senator from Arizona, and her colleague Mark Kelly, who was elected to a special election, also Arizona Senator. We are focusing a lot of attention on lobbying them to keep the filibuster. The filibuster is a Senate rule that essentially requires a 60-vote supermajority to pass ordinary legislation. That means things other than budgets and nominees. And if that stays in place, then H.R. 1 can't pass in total. That doesn't mean they won't try to pass pieces of it with other legislation, but the biggest threat would be ameliorated somewhat. So for your viewers in Montana with Joe Tester, Arizona with Kristen Sinema, West Virginia with Joe Manchin, they should call them up and tell them that they want them to keep the filibuster and oppose H.R. 1 because it radically changes the foundation on which America operates, and that is our elections.
Ken, before I let you go, and switch gears just a little bit, I want to get your take on what we're seeing on the border. It really seems day by day that situation is getting more dire.
It really is. Even the White House admits they're way beyond the capacity of the facilities down there, which all the rest of us would call a crisis. For some reason, they're just determined not to say that word. But when you have over 400 unaccompanied children coming across that border every day, being smuggled over the border by human smugglers, where the U.S. government is catching and releasing virtually all adults into the United States, whether they're COVID positive or not. And in fact, instead of deporting them back to their home countries, is using our immigration transportation to transport them farther into our own country. It's completely backwards. And of course, because they are operating that way is why so many illegal aliens are flooding across our border. So it really is a self-induced crisis by the president's words and policies. And they are being very slow to face up to it, which only makes matters worse. It's a very tough situation for Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California in particular.
Yeah, indeed. And Ken, another thing really topping the news today is that meeting between Biden officials and Chinese representatives that's going to take place in Alaska next week. What can you tell us about that? What do you know?
So it took the Biden administration almost 2 months to really face up to the fact that China is conducting what under American law is a genocide against the Uyghurs and Kazakhs and others in the northwestern part of their country. They were very reluctant to continue that position of the Trump administration. This is something I worked long and hard on in the Trump administration. And it is one of those areas of broad bipartisan agreement. China really is the evil empire in our world today, and they act like it. And they're frankly very strategic about it. And they bring to bear everything they have to work with, not just military and spies, but their academic institutions. They use our immigration laws against us. They've been stealing our intellectual property for decades. The FBI director, in a testimony alongside me, said it's one of the greatest thefts, transfers of wealth by theft in the history of the world. And China uses that very strategically. So we really need the Biden administration to stand strong against a country that, while we have a lot of economic ties to them, they are an enemy, and they view themselves as our enemy. The question is, will we view them that way with their religious oppression and the attempt to export their autocracy and their tyranny all around the world?
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much. Ken Cuccinelli, National Chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative. Thank you for your time.
Good to be with you.
Coming up, church communications. The Pontifical University of the Holy Cross celebrates a milestone. Lawmakers in China just approved tighter control over Hong Kong. They endorsed the ruling Communist Party's move to pick Hong Kong's leaders rather than let the public decide. The measure adds pressure to protesters who have been calling for greater democracy. Our religious sister is caught on camera trying to shield people in Myanmar, also known as Burma. The sister wanted to protect protesters who are outraged by last month's military coup. She knelt in front of officers Monday in an attempt to prevent them from cracking down on the demonstrators. The sister says that she asked the officers not to shoot, arrest, or beat anyone. The Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome is celebrating 25 years of its service to church communications. The communications department aims to train professionals in the church and Christian-based institutions. The department was founded in 1996 with only 9 students. Today, There are 500 alumni all over the world. Joining us now is Daniel Arasa, Dean and Professor of the School of Institutional Communications at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. Daniel, welcome. Great to see you. Over the past 25 years, how has the Communications Department adapted to the constant changes of the church and of society?
Well, many things have happened. When we started in 1996, we had 9 students. We have today more than 100 students and more than 500 alumni all over the world working as spokespersons, directors of communications for church institutions, journalists covering religion. This is something that didn't happen, was not a reality at that time when we started. No? So the church has improved a lot in creating these structures of communications. But certainly the future is still really great and big in the sense that the next step is professionalizing these positions of these people that we are forming, because sometimes in these roles are put people who have a great desire to serve the church, but not the necessary training.
And Daniel, how do you think the field of communications, how has it evolved since the beginning of the pandemic, and do you think the changes are permanent?
Certainly, we are in a transforming moment. When I talk about the pandemic, my first thought goes always to the people who have suffered and is suffering for that. And I think that's the most important element or aspect that we have to mention every time that we talk about the pandemic. Communication leads the sentiments and feelings of people and has a great responsibility, and the media have a great responsibility. And unfortunately, some media, and particularly social media, have created a big confusion. Confusion sometimes because they produce despair in many people. They don't give sense of the things that are happening. And I think the things that need to change and are changing in some cases, but not in all, is this need for providing sense, context, a learning experience of what we have seen in society today, and not just giving data, numbers that sometimes scare people, but don't give a hope for the regular citizen.
Yeah, very good point there. Before I let you go, though, I want to congratulate you. I know this week the Pope appointed you as consultor of the Vatican's Dicastery for Communications. Congratulations again. Tell us a little bit more about that role.
Sure. Well, thanks. First of all, thank you very much to the Holy Father for this nomination. I am honored and grateful, and I accept that with humility. A consultant is an external advisor to the dicastery, so we are not involved in the daily work of the dicastery. There is a tradition in the Curia, in the Vatican Curia, to name experts in different fields to help the different dicasteries in fields like theology, philosophy, canon law, liturgy, but also in the field of communications, which is where I work.
Oh, Daniel, so great talking with you. Thank you so much for coming on. Daniel Arasa from the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. Thank you again.
Thank you so much to you.
Pope Francis will officially designate Knock Shrine in Ireland as an international Marian and Eucharistic shrine on the Feast of St. Joseph next week. The Irish Catholic Bishops' Conference announced today the Pope will give Knock Shrine official recognition and send a video message to the shrine on the night of March 19th. For more on the Knock Shrine and this story, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Up next, pro-life legislation. Find out what comes next for the law protecting unborn babies in Arkansas. And pointing to heaven, how select trees will help rebuild Notre Dame Cathedral. Earlier this week, Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas signed a near total ban on abortion into law. The measure allows abortion only if the mother's life is in danger. Joining us now is Rose Mimms, Executive Director of Arkansas Right to Life. Rose, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. So tell us a little bit more about this law. What else should we know about it? And why do you think it was important for lawmakers to do this now, to pass this bill?
Well, the Arkansas Unborn Child Protection Act, SB 6, as many know it, was designed to challenge Roe v. Wade. I mean, Arkansas is the #1 pro-life state, And we have passed over the years many pro-life laws. And, you know, last year, in 2019, in fact, our last session, we passed a trigger law, which in the event of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, that we would return to our original pre-Roe law, which is abortion only for the life of the mother. So we thought, why not this session go ahead and pass a bill with the 3 justices that the Trump administration was able to get confirmed. We feel like we may have a good chance, so we went for it.
Yeah, and I know the law provides an unclassified felony for those who perform an abortion with a fine of up to $100,000 or 10 years in prison or both. Rose, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think of that penalty? Do you think it goes far enough?
Well, we were careful not to charge the woman because we didn't want to do that. We've never been punitive when it comes to the mothers. And certainly the abortionist needs to pay a high price for, you know, violating a law that protects innocent human life. So, I mean, we could have gone a lot farther, but I think what we've got is a fair punishment.
And what do you think comes next? I know abortion groups have said that they'll block the measure before it takes effect next year.
Yes, that is their typical MO. I mean, we've been through this many times before. We pass good pro-life laws that protects lives and saves women from making such a tragic decision of abortion, and they continually enjoin them, you know, challenge them as soon as they're effective. And we expect that with this one, and, you know, that's just what they do. But, you know, we're going to forge ahead. You know, we're not going to let that stop us. You know, the impact of this legislation, people talking about it, people reading about it, you know, it always has a positive effect, whether the law actually goes into effect or not. And it'll be in the court system for a number of years, and we'll just see, you know, if it is the one that will cause Roe v. Wade to fall. That'd be awesome.
It would be awesome. Can you tell us what other pro-life efforts are going on in Arkansas right now?
Well, we have, gosh, so many pro-life bills right now working their way through our session. One that I've been particularly watching and working towards is an ultrasound law. Right now we have a law that just offers the screen to be shown to the mother if she wants to see it. Well, it's called the Right to Know and See law, and it would make a must display on that ultrasound screen so that it would be there. If the mother chose to look at it, she could. If she wanted to avert her eyes, she could do that. But it also gives a verbal description of the unborn child and the development, where the baby is, you know, if there's twins, you know, all that information that a mother really needs to have before she makes that life and death decision of an abortion.
Well, Rose, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it, and thank you for what you do. Rose Mimms, Executive Director, Arkansas Right to Life.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, an update on the restoration of Paris's famed Notre Dame Cathedral, and this one heads right to a former royal forest in France.
Voilà, il ne reste plus qu'à faire la poutre dedans maintenant pour Notre-Dame.
For 200-year-old oaks this week will eventually be used to reconstruct Notre Dame's cathedral fallen spire. Earlier this year, 1,000 oaks were selected for the transept and spire. The trees were originally planted hundreds of years ago to create wood for shipbuilding. The French president wants the cathedral rebuilt by 2024. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.